Okay, you can start talking now.
Usually we wait for a few seconds till we start talking, but you're like, start talking. I'm
can start talking now. This is how this works.
I understand the basic concept of the podcast and how a podcast works. You have to talk in order to make a podcast, but I just, we usually wait.
Look, have you been dipping into Tony's collection since he abandoned it?
No,
I feel like since last issue, you've been dipping into the Tony Stark premium collection.
His premium collection on in every single well-stocked bar in his establishment. No, I have not. I have not. I've been nose deep in a book that had come out a while back.
A while back.
A while back.
How much a while back?
Let's see. I think this was, boy, 2014.
Wow.
So,
and are we still talking about drugs and alcohol?
Yes, we are. Thematically, yes, we are. We are talking about drugs. Yes.
And you had me buy this book.
Yes, I did.
3 years ago.
We are
just now getting to it.
Yeah, I know. Because I was like, hey, we should cover this. It's a really good book. And 3 years ago they're rolling a movie out for it. And I was like,
you mean we're 3 years past when we should have covered it?
Yeah. But
I see.
But just recently, this week, the week that we're recording, I'm not sure when this will go out, but they had released the sequel to the first movie that was adapted from this book. So,
well, and no spoilers, because I've only read the comic and watched the first movie, which we will talk about the movies in our next episode.
Yes.
But today we're talking about Ciudad.
Correct.
Comic written by Andy Parks, produced by, they say, Joe and Anthony Russo. And I think you were saying Joe and Anthony Russo pitched the story, but then Andy wrote it and then worked on the story with them. So
yeah, I
almost like plot editor, right? And then writer.
I'm not sure about the meat and potatoes of it, but from what I understand from like interviews and articles and stuff like that, it was something that they had an idea for. They didn't know what route they were going to go with this type of story, and getting it on paper, so to speak, was the first step. So writing out the basic story, and then Andy got a hold of it and then was able to make it into the graphic novel that we have.
And we've got illustrated by Fernando Leon Gonzalez, which, yeah, this was, it's a, just prepare yourself. I'm going to tell you now, and I'll tell you once, if you do read this book, I would not be handing it to anyone that is a child.
Definitely not. Is jam-packed.
I want them to see lots of violence and sex.
Yes.
I shouldn't say lots of sex, but
there's
definitely a scene where that's borderline just straight up pornographic. It's not borderline, right?
Yeah. There's a couple of scenes, but yeah, a lot of violence. It starts off quick.
Yeah, it's a very, it's a 155 page graphic novel, so we are definitely not going to go page by page.
We can't
through this one. We will do some summarization.
Justice. Yeah,
we couldn't do some justice. We'll do some. So what we'll aim to do is kind of go through the sections and give you an idea of what the book is about. I'll give you an idea of what the art looks like. Obviously, it's great for podcasts since you can't see the art, but I highly recommend you read this one. And I will try to put in the show notes, if I can actually find where you can read it, I'll find it. Here's something to know. This book is not available on Amazon right now, the actual book, and I also couldn't find it on eBay. So if you actually have this book in your possession, it's a rare one.
A prized
not sure why it's so rare. Like, I'm not sure why.
My thoughts, production wise, when it first probably came out, it might not have had a giant reception, and then the reception it did get after the first movie Extraction, when the book was adapted, it might have got a lot of people just saying, "Oh, I got to read this." The book it was based off of, so they probably bought up copies that were out there.
Yeah,
I
and I
know.
don't even see it on Comixology.
Because I mean, I know that I'm the kind of person that when something gets adapted and I'm interested in it, that I want to find out the rest of the the material that is derived from. So I'm like, oh hey, if there's a book, if there's something, that's anything that leads up to the creation of whatever it is that I'm enjoying, I want to find out more about it. So
Well, it was fantastic, like the book. Let's just say that. So
yeah.
and different than what we've been reading, but I also want to segue. Right, so far I do want to segue a little bit from what we've been covering. So we've covered the '60s presentations of drugs in comics, right? Early '70s. We did late '70s with the Iron Man books and alcohol. We did the early 80s where we start to see the drug war presented in comics. And we haven't done the 90s and the 2000s yet. We'll get there. But I do want to contrast what was going on in those Teen Titans drug war books versus this.
Oh, yeah.
Because we get more of the impact of what the drug war and smuggling looks like because of the drug war. Whereas those Teen Titan books, of course, that we made fun of a lot, were just like, oh, yeah, those evil drug dealers are coming to the United States and coming after our schools. Look at them flying their drugs in on their helicopters and they're going to get us. And this book paints the picture of what happens because of the U.S.'s war on drugs.
Yeah, and how divided a city can become.
Yeah, and I love the setting for this book because it takes place in an actual real city, Ciudad del Este. And now, if you want to see me mess things up, watch me try to pronounce Spanish and Portuguese city names. So this is going to be fun. But it is in Paraguay, and it's on the border with Brazil. And there's a famous bridge there called the Friendship Bridge, which will definitely play a part in the story. And we also have, and I was trying to get it's Foz do, my Portuguese, right? Foz do Iguaçu, and I don't know what the squiggly line under the C does in Portuguese. But apparently this is also, for Brazil, it's a really famous area. There's a beautiful falls there. It's a kind of a tourist area on one side. But then if you cross the bridge, you get into Paraguay. And it's important for Paraguay to have this bridge and this connection to Brazil because Paraguay is landlocked. And so part of what this does is there's an international airport on each side. But you also have access to Portuguese ports this way, or to Brazilian ports this way. So it's a very important crossing, right, between the two countries. Right. And apparently you can just walk across, like in real life, you can just walk across this bridge. If you're just walking across, they're not even checking passports. So you can freely move between Paraguay and Brazil, which, as they cover in the very beginning of the story, is a perfect setup for smuggling.
Yeah.
and contraband and drugs and other things. So I learned a lot, by the way, because I went, me, I go back and like you said, Dan wants to know the source material. So I'm like, oh, well, let me learn more about this Friendship Bridge. And apparently to relieve traffic on that bridge that they reference in the story, they actually opened another bridge. I think it was last year. I was doing some research. So they've actually increased the ability of folks to cross that at that border point because it was so backed up. And so anyway, yeah, that's a little history in this. I do think Paraguay does have one access point to the Atlantic Ocean, if I remember right. Isn't it down by Buenos Aires?
Believe I think
they get like Uruguay and Argentina give them like one little tiny point. I'm looking at a map right now. It looks like they do have one port at the bottom of the country, but nothing close to the capital. And so this would be definitely the closest point to another country and closest crossing to the capital. So yeah, it's anyway, a little
nugget
look it up
of
on the map if you don't believe us. Yeah.
Dangerous territory too.
Apparently, I mean, based on this book, when I was reading on what was going on right there, I saw people saying it was safe to cross the bridge and go stay in a hotel. And
I'm
there
sure.
was a couple of YouTube videos. So
I'm sure
it'd
it's
be interesting
relatively
to see
safe,
how it's
but
presented, how it's presented now versus how it's presented in the book in 2014.
yeah, I'm sure it's relatively safe. But then again, I mean, my own personal experience in South America is just like there are safe parts, there are not safe parts. So it's
Well,
all
just be intelligent. I mean,
yeah.
you're in a different country with different rules and different laws and different social structures and culture. And no, Paraguay does not touch. Yeah, I'm wrong. I'm scrolling back out. Paraguay doesn't even come close to touching the water. Sorry, I couldn't see the borders. Paraguay is not even close to touching
Not
the
even
water. So
close.
this is their access point.
It's the only
Sorry
thing.
about that at the beginning. I'm not going to delete that out. But I scrolled my map back out and I was like, I didn't remember Paraguay touching the water last night when I was looking at a map. And it definitely does not. And,
Does not.
yeah. You got Paraguay and Bolivia right there in the middle of the continent with no
Smack dab
points
in the
of
center.
access to water, landlike by all these other countries. So yeah, Friendship Bridge, very important to Paraguay.
Very important. And very important to the story.
With that context, do you want to add any more context? Do you think we've covered enough context? We're in a city in Paraguay.
Yeah.
It's a very important access point to Paraguay, and smuggling and things happen here because Paraguay has different laws than Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
I think you got it
context.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us about the beginning of the story, Greg.
Like I said, it jumps off pretty fast. I mean, we're introduced to a bunch of nameless characters, but everybody has guns, and we have what we believe to be
and masks.
And masks. Yes, they're all masked, and what we believe to be our main character, or one of our main characters in the story, getting kind of like the. He's trying to get information from these guys with guns because he's on a job, right? He's trying to do a recovery, and they're basically like, "Hey, we want the money,"
Yeah.
And from that point, it goes from not so great to interesting.
Yeah, it's in storytelling, this would be the teaser for the story. Yeah.
Yeah.
24-page teaser of all action, very little words. I was really, how we were complaining about the Iron Man books having too much dialogue when the art tells you what's happening.
Yeah.
This book is almost the opposite. There's almost no narration dialogue through this entire action sequence, which I actually think is really great. Because when I say almost the opposite, I don't mean that as criticism. I mean it as a compliment.
Yeah.
Because the art is so great that Fernando's art is so great that you don't need narration. You know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, it definitely moves through at a steady clip where the reader can kind of scan through, enjoy the art, look through the panels, see the action, follow it really, really easy. You don't need any of that additional whatnot. When they do have any dialogue, I would say it's very driven and meaningful dialogue for the moment. So
yeah, and to set the scene, basically, like you said, we've got a guy who they call a white guy, and he's shooting up what looks like to be some kidnappers, and he rescues a girl named Eva, EVA, and he basically kills a whole bunch of people in the process. Summarizing it, that's pretty much what happens, right?
I mean, basically, yeah, he does a team wipe in 25 pages.
And then
of a block,
and then they get outside, and this little girl yells out, "Hey, there's the murderer!" And the dad looks like he's not going to do anything, but then he gets back in his house and reports to the gang members in the city what happened, and then I believe it's the police start coming after him.
Yeah. Cops show up, and then it's like it was like, oh, the police, and he's like, we can't trust them, just move, follow me.
And then they dive into the trunk of a car that's presumably waiting for them. And that's the start of the story. So we've got a lot of stuff we need to know. Like, who is this guy? Why is he rescuing this girl? He seems to be a little bit bitter about his team telling him it wouldn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and why are the police in line with the kidnappers? Like, I don't know.
Why are they working? Yeah, why are they working?
We get to find out. I thought it was a really cool way. I mean, I flew through the first few pages. I mean, there's not a lot of dialogue, but it really keeps you moving too. Like the way the art is set up, it makes you want to see what's happening next.
Definitely. And then, then the next, as we open on the next thing, it gives us all that context that you were talking about, just about the area, about how it's run, what happens in that area, how it's the home of cartels and human trafficking.
Yeah, it tells us about the bridge. The Parana River is the river. And I think also one of the things that I will say this book does really well is I don't think I would have been drawn into this book if it started with all of this context.
Mm-hmm.
But since they drew me into the story, now I was really interested in the context they were building for the story.
Yeah, I think you started off with all that chunky text boxes. It's a lot. It's very heavy. But
after we get the context for the city, right, and what goes on there, then we get to Ava's story. So we go 5 days in the past, and we see her out with schoolmates, presumably, and she goes home, and we interact with her housekeeper, I guess, or her sister. I can't really tell.
Housekeeper, I think.
Or mother. It could be.
I'm thinking housekeeper.
Oh, not her mother, because it says your mother will be home tomorrow.
Yeah, it's the outfit. I'm thinking housekeeper.
And as we go through this, she sneaks out and goes to a club, meets a boy, goes to smoke pot with the boy, and the police come by and start harassing them. And, when I was reading this the first time, I was like, oh, I just was wondering, like, does Paraguay have really tough marijuana laws or something? Like, I don't know. I did not look this up later because the plot moves so quickly.
Yeah.
But the police officer takes a puff, says it's good stuff, and then shoots the boy in the head. It's like, oh, geez. Okay, and that's how the kidnapping starts. So the police end up kidnapping Ava. So we've got that context. Then we get to the next scene, and do you want to set the next scene?
Yeah, we open on a prison, and it's very, very much like you get interaction between inmate and a lawyer, or I believe a lawyer, and they're having this conversation, basically like, hey, got to tell you something that you don't want to hear. Your daughter, and the first jump is like, she's dead. It's like, no, she's been taken. And then it's like, we got to get her back.
Yeah. And they also allude to that the drug dealer is a little bit limited on funds because he's in Brazil and the Brazilian government sort of locked down his drug trade, right?
Yeah.
And that's why the daughter and the family were hanging out in Paraguay, right?
I think she was actually stolen from Brazil.
From Brazil. Okay.
Yeah. And taken over to Paraguay.
Keep me honest here, yeah.
And I think that's why, and that's probably why they have to get back from one country to the other.
And then we get another scene flip, and we end up in the Palm Islands of Dubai. And do you know anything about the Palm Islands?
Are they the man-made islands in the middle of the...
They are. They are. Paradise on Earth, man-made created paradise in Dubai. And
probably very expensive to be at.
Yeah. And in the Palm Islands, somebody gets murdered. Jeez. Not so cool.
What do you mean?
Or are they shooting guns? No, sorry, I lied. Nobody gets murdered.
They're just shooting grenade launchers, blowing up palm trees.
But we get introduced to Mikkel, one of the supporting cast in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get introduced to the main character of the story next, who's hanging out in Madagascar. And he basically gets called and offered a job. And his whole team is like, don't do it.
Like, don't do it at all. It's not worth it.
And apparently he likes to sleep with women that aren't his wife. We find that out too. And the whole team's like, don't go do this adventure. But our main character, who we don't know who he is yet, he's just like, yeah, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great dialogue here and a lot of back and forth. And at about 42 pages in, there we go. Yeah, we also get to meet another group. Sorry, 40 pages in, we meet the boss, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or no, sorry, I lied. We're still going into Paraguay. So he's flying to Paraguay to take on the mission.
Yeah.
He's all cleaned up and he meets his team. Okay, so what are we set up for? We know the police guys are bad.
Police guys are bad. Drug dealer dad is in prison.
So he probably has a bad team around him.
Yeah, daughter's been kidnapped, and now he wants her back.
And we know everybody wants dad's money.
Yeah.
Presumably. And we don't know how that money's even locked down. And we get to the scene at page 42 where he's ready to go take the mission. And then we're back in the trunk.
Yep.
There's a lot that goes on in the first third of this book.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot that goes on. They set up a lot of backstory, but really with the backstory, as far as the main storyline, you're probably only into the story for about 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So we've only seen 20 minutes of the actual rescue.
Yeah, it's like I said, it moves quick, and even when it's slow, it's still moving quick.
And while they're in the trunk, we meet another character that we've been alluded to in the past.
Yes.
And we meet the sheriff of the town. This guy is the sheriff of, I'm going to mess this up. He's in Paraguay, right?
Yeah, they're in Paraguay.
Yeah, okay. And the sheriff is incredibly corrupt. He's running the town, basically. And he'll have some interactions with the mayor later to firmly establish that he's running the town. And he's with these kids that are helping him smuggle drugs. And he's accusing them of stealing. And he throws one of them off a roof. And then one other kid steps up and said, "Oh, the kid you threw off the roof was the one that did this." And then for saying that, he makes the other kid chop off 2 of his fingers. That's not a very nice guy.
I mean, he's teaching lessons.
Yeah, these are definitely the kind of lessons that we should have learned as youth. No, would have been tougher.
Maybe.
I saw an article today. The current generation is not ready to fight a revolutionary war.
Yeah.
I did not read this article. But yeah, of course they're not, because we're not in a state where we need to fight a revolutionary war right now.
Right.
Because we already did that. So I definitely wouldn't expect those folks to be ready, nor would I expect them to be ready for something like we're reading in this book, because the culture is different now. It's amazing somebody wants to hold back to something that happened over 200 years ago and just complain, "Oh, the new generation's just not tough enough for this stuff." I think they're tougher in different ways. But here we get real exposure to violence and the impact it has on kids. And yeah, it's really gross.
Yeah, definitely.
So now we're back to the trunk, and they're getting out of the trunk, and they're finding a spot in the city. They're trying to find a spot to get out of the city, right?
Yeah, they're trying to get their exit point that they have locked in to get out.
So they move down the river a little bit, presumably, right?
Yeah.
And they're trying to do a couple things. He gives her some pills to take, and tells her they're antibiotics. He gets her in a flak jacket.
Just prepared, you never know what's going to be out there.
Well, they don't, and they start heading to their boat. So it's supposed to be super easy, right? That's going to extract them.
Yeah.
And then we see, it wasn't Mikkel. I'm trying to remember the other guy's name, but his associate dead on the boat.
Yeah.
So the police have already gotten to this guy, and they are trying to get Ava back. And so now we have the story. We're at 1/3 in, but I think this is good. Now we have the story, right? The boat's gone.
And now they're on the run again.
Boat, and now they are stuck. They are definitely stuck in the city. And bad news bears, because now he gets back to the car and he's trying to dial Mikkel and like, find me another way out. Klaus was the guy's name. He's dead. Klaus. And Ava's trying not to get shot in the back of this giant Cadillac they're in, or limousine, but I think it's a Cadillac, and they're definitely headed away. And then we get another action scene.
Boom, full on car chase, just a bunch of shooting, fire. It's pretty intense until they finally escape all that, and then they wind up in hiding again.
Yeah, and they find a place, and then they're working on getting them into a permanent place. So
to kind of lay low until things cool down a little bit.
Yeah, and we also find out that the father has reneged on the payment.
Yeah.
And so his team is trying to tell him to leave her alone and get out of the situation. And he's kind of upholding some sort of mercenary moral code of finishing the job, even though he's not getting paid. The job.
He's like, I know I'm not getting paid, but got this kid.
And then, we get a situation where they're hiding out and all of a sudden he feels responsible and they're trying to clean each other up and get ready for the next phase of their journey, basically.
Yeah.
Except it can't stop. He's got to go out and try to find them food. So now he's out. And for some reason, he thinks a giant, tall white guy can just seamlessly fit into what's going on. And he can go find some food for them and everything will be fine. And that's where we get a gunfight. And this is where we get the kids start.
Yeah, right, you get this gunfight, this massive chase scene that goes on for a few pages.
Of all places.
Huh? Yeah, through a
mall. Yeah.
Gunfight, chase scene, the kids show up, and it turns into, this is like the kids chasing him down to the mall. And
it's the kids that the sheriff, was upset with, right?
Yeah.
He's like, you guys got to kill this
loose guy. On the city to go find this guy.
And... Hey, and right on page 72, is a couple pages earlier, the woman at the slot machines from Iron Man shows up.
Pretty much, yeah.
She's complaining about them trouncing through her store, and she's like, I've got you guys on video.
Call my nephew.
Completely ignoring everything else is going on around
right.
her. She just cares that her store got messed up. She doesn't care that these kids are shooting up the entire mall.
Yeah.
She's like, you knocked things over in my store. Oh, no. I did kind of I liked this better than I liked it in the Iron Man books, actually.
The action.
Yeah. Well, and she's like, I'm going to call my nephew. I don't know who her nephew is. But
yeah, he's just a baddie.
He's apparently a big baddie. Well, we get going and we're moving through the story. And now we get a little bit more of the backstory. So we've got the mayor and he's meeting with Mora. That's the lieutenant. I kept calling him the sheriff, but basically the guy in charge.
Yeah.
And he's trying to establish himself. I'm still the mayor of Ciudad del Este. And Mora's like, you're the mayor because you deliver mountains of cash to your Hezbollah friends. So they established earlier, too, that the Lebanese controlled the leadership of the structure of the town. So that's where some of the smuggling was going on. And then we've got Mora here who's trying to establish himself as the leader of the town, basically. And they're basically fighting over territory, so to speak.
Yeah.
But basically, he ends the discussion by saying, well, he's just going to put the entire police force under his authority if the mayor, keeps messing with him. So Mora is clearly in charge here.
No power for the mayor.
And then we get the next section, and he's got dad gets to make a call from the
from the prison.
Dad gets to make a call from the prison, and he's got 2 minutes, and he's talking to his lawyer, and he's basically like, staying alive here, fighting the bastards in court, it's costing me close to $1 million a month. How long do you think I have to live when the money runs out? Is kind of where we leave that. Mm-hmm. So we find out a little bit about why he doesn't want to pay the guy rescuing, who we still don't know his name, but we get moving.
Yeah.
But that creates another character who's already been hurt. We've got Edu, the lawyer, and now he's bandaged up, and he's another intervening party who wants to wants to get Eva, right? So we've got Mora who wants to get Eva. We've got Edu who wants to get Eva, and all for nefarious purposes, right? They want to hold her as money or kill her if that money doesn't work out, right?
Right.
And basically, everybody wants to keep her in Ciudad del Este, right? Because if we're back in Brazil, we're under a different jurisdiction.
Exactly. Basically,
and where the drug cartel has been defeated, right?
Once she crosses the bridge, she's basically like back to home. So she's
for whatever that means.
Yeah, she's safe-ish.
Ish, yeah. It wasn't safe last time, but yeah.
Safer.
There we go, safer. So this is where we find out how Mikkel's going to help them out on page 77 as we move through the story. And hey, somebody comes to pick them up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really nice. And I'm going to totally mispronounce this guy's name. I thought it was Gauche. Gasson. Sorry, not Gauche. Gasson. And Gasson is clearly a local, but he set himself up with the police. The police know they're looking for people being smuggled, and Gasson has a big van, and he just tells the police, like, hey, we know you're looking for these folks, but I have some stuff in the back of the van I really don't want to talk about, and I don't need you to look at. And the police are like, yeah, that's right. We'll take this money, and we don't need to look.
Yeah.
So they know him well enough to interact with him, but he pays them off. And then we get to his house, and he has a very well-protected house with security measures and a wife and a daughter.
Yeah.
And your fax machine is ready to go. Because I think Greg still has a fax machine. And, even if Greg doesn't have a fax machine, I just want to imagine that he has a fax machine running faxes in the background, giving him updates for his daily tasks. And that fax machine told him right now that he has to do something.
Yep.
But the most important thing here is after Greg gets a fax, we come back to Gasson's house with his family.
Gasson and his family of 4.
And we go through some really important scenes here at Gasson's house. And this is a big chunk of the story. But this is where they really start humanizing some of the characters in the story. Mm-hmm. And I think this was needed at this point because most of the characters in the story are pretty abhorrent to this point, right?
Right.
Like even with our unnamed rescuer, we know that he helped kill somebody and somebody was going around killing the 4 people that killed the guy, right?
Right.
Killed the Israeli national, right? And or was it Iranian? Well, anyway, I have to go back to the beginning, but they killed somebody, right? And so all 3 of the 4 are dead. We know that one of his member of his team is dead. We know that Mara is abhorrent. We know that Edu, not a great guy, kind of went into his business of himself and he was, trying to take over the drug empire. Mm-hmm. We know that the mayor is working with the terrorist organization, and we still get sort of this, dehumanized figure in a sense, right? Like they're pretty 2-dimensional, right? A lot of the characters. And this is where we start to add dimension to them and start to understand what they do. So we get Gasson and we get to find out more about Ava, and she finally gets to get cleaned up from the adventure. It's really important that we understand that they have a giant fish tank in their house for some reason.
Yeah. I mean,
and even though the wife definitely knows what her husband does and doesn't like the fact that it's been brought into their house, but still welcomes everybody as if, this is her family, this is her world.
Yeah.
And she's going to make it as normal as possible.
Yeah. She's a gracious host. She's like, come take a look at our sharks.
And she even says, Gasson knows I don't approve of him bringing his business into our home, but you and Miss Roche are our guests now, and you are welcome, and thank you. So you've never been tempted to settle and start a family, and this is where I'm sorry, I know my husband calls you T, and then he says, I am Tommy Aldridge. So for now, we know him as Tommy.
Tommy.
And he basically says, hey, I was young and stupid and, messed up my family relationship. And that's what we get all of that. But basically, we get a scene where they start doing really family things. And Ava starts to come out of her shell because their daughter tries to sing Towns of Portugal with a mouthful of water, and water gets spit all over the place. And Ava kind of comes out of her shell and is like, Mom starts to scold her, and Ava's like, please don't, because it's like the first happiness Ava's had, in 5 days, presumably, right?
Yeah, she's
been
miserable.
Smuggled around.
Yeah, stuffed in a trunk, shot at.
And then we get to a stomach cramp, and Ava goes upstairs. And here's one of the really dark parts of the story. It was interesting. I don't know. I have to criticize every part of some story, right?
Yeah.
The next scene was really awful.
It's very brutal. It's a hard, like, from 84 leaves off on a high note, and then 85 through 80, I want to say 88, you're kind of like, it kind of like sucks it out of you. Basically, and this is me, digging, but I'm assuming Ava's feeling a tremendous amount of guilt for everything, and because, and then also just feeling slightly like with the circumstances and stuff that just powerless and probably at a loss, because there's what can she go back to, and she tries to commit suicide.
Yeah. That's not how I read that, but I read it as the drug impacting her and making her bleed. So they give her RU-486, and I could be wrong. I know that part is true, and that's where the stomach cramp came from, and then it basically causes her to bleed more, and that's where the stomach cramps were coming from. Though I did read it the way you read it the first time.
Okay,
too.
maybe
I didn't know what was going on. And then, but either way, we start to see.
Probably be right, because what I'm seeing, like, I mean, how you're explaining it, and then versus what I see, like what I saw, like I'm looking, and it's just some of the stuff that she says dialogue wise.
Yep.
It just it feels like that's what.
It does. And it's interesting that, we go there too, because the character has been treated so two-dimensionally to this point, mm-hmm. right? That all you do is see her as a victim.
Mm-hmm.
And then that victim sees a family and happiness that she doesn't think she's ever going to have. And you think that the victim would despair to that point. But we also get to see how kind of terrible Tommy, the mercenary,
mm-hmm.
and I'm sure that's his real name, is. Like, he goes in, he treats her as a two-dimensional person, right? As a victim, gives her a drug cocktail that includes RU-486, and that's the day after pill for those folks that don't know. I probably messed up the numbers, but it's the day after pill, and it causes her to bleed, and because it's causing her to abort a baby. But in this case, she wasn't raped, and he never bothered to even ask her before forcing the meds down her throat. And this is the part where we start to get the three dimensions of the character, right? And she's just basically saying, you treat me no differently than anyone else.
And I skipped over, like, for some reason, I just, like, in my mind, I saw a different scene play out. So I just, like, skipped over that whole entire bottom portion. Boy.
I also think that's important, though, because it's important, though, when we're analyzing a story like this, to what does the story prompt you? It's pictures and words, right?
Yeah.
Like, what does the story prompt you to interpret out of the pictures?
Right.
And I'm going to say, like, I interpreted it the exact way you did until I kept reading further into the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I thought at first, too. I thought she was trying to commit suicide.
Man, I did that two times.
But what comes out of this is Ava standing up for herself, and Tommy the mercenary breaking down and just saying, like, I really don't know what to say. Like, he's like, I make so many assumptions, basically acknowledging that he treats her as subhuman.
Yeah.
And this is where we get the break in both characters.
The guard being let down, and they both kind of see each other for the first time.
Yeah. And, she thought her life was over, and she even, thought of herself as subhuman, right? Hey, I'm here. I'm locked in the closet. My life is over. And then they bond and decide they're going to help each other out, even though she's still suffering the effects. And he sends her to go back to sleep and goes down to hang out with Ghassan, who sent his family away to keep them safe, presumably.
Yep.
But what we find out very quickly is he didn't send them away to keep them safe. He basically tells, have we got a name reveal yet? Trying to glance through really quickly. Yeah, we're still going with Tommy. But Ghassan is explaining his positioning to him, being a mustache-twirling villain, telling him everything. But I'm assuming, too, in this case, we get a little bit of extra dimension from Ghassan, too, because we've seen him with the family. And he's also trying to justify what he's doing to his friend, his friend.
Because he's trying to make a better life for his family.
Yeah. But basically he tries to kill Tommy multiple ways, but Tommy wins the fight over a few pages and kills Ghassan in the fish tank. because you knew by bringing up that fish tank, it was going to go at some point.
Yeah.
And he kills them in the fish tank, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a whole entire fight through the rooms, and totally ends in the fish tank.
And on page 100 of all pages, we see a shark flying in the background. I did laugh at that. Like, it looks
Sharks
like a great white shark flying in the background. But it's another intense scene. And I again too, I know I said I wouldn't talk about the movie, and I'm not, but I'll just say they try to repeat this sort of in the movie, and I don't think it works. Because we get way more justification for the characters here and why they're doing things. So props to Andy Parks for reeling in the Russos and keeping them on point here.
Yeah, definitely. So it makes for a great scene in the book.
So he grabs, Tommy's been betrayed by his friend. He tried to sell him out to Mora, the lieutenant / chief, the police person. Mm-hmm. And he grabs his phone and he calls him. And he has a nice conversation with Mora while Mora's in the strip club, and basically says, the entire city is closing in on you, and there's only one possible outcome. You're going to be dead, and the girl is going to serve her purpose. I offer you nothing. He won't deal with him. So he's like, now that I know Ghassan has failed, maybe my men will be there in 10 minutes. Tommy calls his bluff. It's like, if you knew where he lived, you would have killed him already. So we're good there. And he's back again. Dial Mikkel. Like, Mikkel's got to give him enough. Mikkel has not done a phenomenal job getting him out of these situations so far, but he goes back to him for one more try.
Right.
He's like, I need out. And so he goes back to get Ava, and Ava is shocked to find Ghassan dead because it's been her first connection to reality. She's really shaken. And what do you do with a person who's really shaken? You give them a gun.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I like how when he gives her the gun, he's like, well, this is how you use it in case you do need to. And she's like, I know how to use guns. Yeah.
My dad's a drug dealer.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, this is an interesting, that's an interesting piece of context to put in there. Because, like, she's, for someone that's coming off as defenseless in some ways, she's like, I can use this. Like, I know how to do this. And it's like, she's starting to, like you said, through this bit right here, she's coming out of the shell and she's starting to take back that herself.
Yeah. Yes. And as she does, we get a scene back. He's dialing Mikkel, but we get a scene back to the mayor, conversing with Mora again, who's busy at the time of the call.
Yeah. This is one of those overly sexy scenes.
And, I just presumably these are women that were smuggled to in that other scene, which makes me really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But basically, we're finding out how bad a guy Mora is, but they just spell it out right here. Mora is trying to replace Roche as the head cartel guy in the city and the drug smuggling. And the mayor knows that, and they're interacting with each other. And then we get a scene with Edu also. So the mayor's trying to stop him, Mora's trying to stop him, and Edu's trying to stop him. And Edu says there are several routes to the bridge from the west, but we know where to focus our efforts, and we have enough men to cover the streets. He can't let Mora have his daughter again. So we've got Edu trying to get the daughter for his purposes. Mm-hmm. We've got Mora trying to get Ava for his purposes, and the mayor just wants it taken care of so he can keep his cut of the smuggling operations.
Yeah. He wants everything to be peachy keen.
And now we get boys on scooters trying to kill people. We've got police trying to kill people. And it is a mad dash to the Friendship Bridge at this point.
Yeah, it is. It's very, like, from that point on, it's very, like, Mad Maxy, like, in the sense of the car chases, the shootouts and stuff like that. A lot of high action, where our main character's like, I just need more bullets, to the point where, you got Edu, just, like, he's on a path for blood throughout this whole entire race through the city to catch them. He's going to stop at all costs to catch them through the city, even if it means possibly killing everybody.
And what this leads into in And you called it Mad Max. I'd sort of call it Warriors. Come out, play. I can't do it. Because we get all these different gang feels and different groups, and they're all trying to kill him. And eventually we get down to a scenario where we find out that we definitely find out in the story by the time we get to into a couple of the scenes. One reveal during the chase scenes is Edu is trying to get Ava back, and we find out that Edu definitely, and I think maybe I spoiled it a little bit too early in the story, but Edu definitely is not trying to get Ava back to save her for her dad out of some good graces, right? Like he basically says, I've built this business with Roche over these years, and I'm not going to lose it to a stupid American, right? So they get in a fight, and eventually Edu loses, but Tommy is definitely damaged by the fight.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is a rough fight. Then we end up again right after that, more kids on scooters chasing them down.
Right. And, it reminds me too, the kids on scooters, just the stories of warlord armies and just employing kids to do things. And the kids on scooters are dispatched pretty quickly by the adult mercenary, but that leads him into an area with snipers and police all set up. And basically the police are at the Friendship Bridge, and they are going to do their best to prevent him from coming across and getting Ava over to Brazil, where the Brazilian authorities can protect her. So the police roadblock is all set up, and I think it's hilarious because he goes through it in like 2 panels.
Yeah. Blows it up. Boom. Done. Driving.
And then suddenly he emerges from their minivan with a rocket launcher.
Yeah.
And he starts firing rockets at the police, and that pretty much wipes them out initially. And then we start moving into the end of the story on page 138. And here's where we have and this is why I think this is beautiful the way Parks wrote this. We do get some thought bubbles, right? Throughout the story a little bit.
Yeah.
But mostly it's dialogue. Yeah. And now we get our first real narration, but it's narration of a letter that our American mercenaries writing for Ava. And so we get Ava, and every background scene is the fights and things that are going on. I wanted to tell you some things I knew I wouldn't be able to say. And then we get another scene where the police are still trying to cross the bridge, and they're reporting that he blew up the whole checkpoint. And as we get into the story, continue. I've been doing this job for a long time, and it continues to happen. The fight continues to happen in the background. I've seen a whole lot of victims, and I know what they look like. And now he's telling her that they need to bolt soon, that she's going to have to run on her own. He says, you're not one of them. You're a strong girl, and you can be. And at the same time, he's prepping her to run across the bridge. Mm-hmm. Anything you want in this life, not everyone has that. Most people get stuck. And this is at the same time he's telling Ava that she needs to go, but he calls his bluff and says, because he's going to cover her, and he says, for the last thing you say to me to be a lie. Or is that what you want? The last thing you say to me to be a lie? And of course, we've got this narration still going on in the background, or this letter, stuck in places they're not strong enough to get out of. And I've been stuck for the last 8 years. So we're getting the reveal. He kisses her on the cheek and tells her to go. And after this time with you, maybe I can move on. And now we get the final big fight scene. And he says, I haven't cared about anyone in such a long time. And we get this fight scene. So he bursts out to fight the kids on scooters and any police left on the Paraguay side of the bridge. And he says, I've been a drone, functional, but empty. Caring about something, about someone, and caring about you has changed me. And he's telling Ava to fucking run, and she's yelling Tyler no, because she knows his name now, because that was disclosed in the truck. That was like his last gift to her. And basically we have another big fight scene as the letter continues. And without reading the entire letter, I'll just say, if I can make it out of Ciudad, having cared about you will make me a different man. And so, but we know from earlier in the story, there's one caveat to this. Mikkel has mentioned that Tyler cannot go to Brazil because he'll be arrested and extradited. And so as he makes his fight scene, he gets Ava to Brazil, but he wins/loses the fight by jumping off the bridge into the river.
He's pretty shot up at this point, so he's been hit a few times while he's on the bridge. I do like that. I'm gonna say I like that we have realistic situation. You know, he's a damaged hero. He gets damaged in the firefight. He's not a Captain America. You know,
no pun intended. Based on who wrote this book.
Yeah, but I mean, he
but maybe he's a Winter Soldier.
Yeah, he takes damage,
he gets shot, and
gets wounded.
Well, anyway, he ends up. We get Ava safe. She's across the bridge, and Tyler ends his letter by saying, "Make a good life for yourself, a good long one." And he ends it with Tyler, and she reads the letter while she's being taken care of, and then we find out that 3.4 miles from Ciudad del Este, we find Tyler in a makeshift hospital room being fixed up by Mikkel, and we get to find out that she's safe, but to do it, they had to
make a lot of bribes.
Yeah. They basically spent all their money.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, send Eva $1 million." And they're like, "What?" Like,
what did you say?
Why would she send her $1 million? He's like, "She gets $1 million." And Mikkel's like, "And how the hell are we supposed to get that to her? You know, we have an account number, anything." And they're like, "You'll figure something out." And we get back to the Supermax, and Mr. Roche is meeting with somebody, and he's been sent with some troubling room. "I'm afraid your daughter is missing. Does not appear she was taken. She left your home in Sao Paulo 2 days ago, and she left a note asking that you not look for her." He's like, "Where's my fucking lawyer?" And he's like, "Your lawyer's left the country, Mr. Roche. We believe he's in Africa now. And he seems to have emptied your account, and he has nothing, and he is facing a life now where he is likely going to be dead very, very, very soon." And now we get to 5 weeks later in Ciudad del Este in the second epilogue. So epilogue number 1 was going to the jail. Well, epilogue number 1 was him healing. Epilogue number 2 was going to the jail to find out the fate of Mr. Roche. Now we get to find out Mora's fate, and Mora's partying, and he gets run into by Tyler in the bathroom, and Tyler shoots him in the head. So there we go. Goodbye, Mora. I like the epilogues. And then we get the final epilogue, which is just one page of Ava is in Paris. She gets a text. She's sculpting. And it just says, the text says, "Sleep sound, Ava. You're safe. Tyler." The end.
A really compact story. I mean, you know, like a fast moving, tightly told story in this book.
Yeah. And so a couple of things I learned here too.
Mm-hmm.
One, I really appreciate, you know, Andy Parks was an inker professionally as well as an artist. I mean, he drew as well. But I think really inkers I've seen in the past. There are ones that are really good storytellers because what they're doing is cleaning up the plot and the story as they go to refine the art. And it really shows that he's a really well-rounded writer in the sense that he can also conceptualize what's going on in the story. And I really, obviously the artist has a lot of leeway, but I really felt the pacing changes throughout the story, whether there's a lot of 8-panel grids in the story and modified 8-panel grids as you go. We don't have a lot of big splash pages as the story goes. And I really think that the way he laid this out with the artist, Fernando Leon Gonzalez, I feel like they did a really good job laying this out and keeping the pacing moving, because I'm always comfortable reading through these 8-panel grids. And then, like I said, instead of splash pages, what we usually get is just a combining of the panels. So if you look at like page 144 during the fight scene on the bridge, it's still an 8-panel grid layout, but you just combine the 2 panels at the top. You combine the 4 panels in the middle, but then you separate the panels at the bottom. And I really liked how this was consistently done throughout the book. It really helped the story flow. And I mean, I read the story in like hour and a half, maybe, probably faster. So I just picked it up and started reading, dog snuggling with me, and we read the story really quickly. So it moved fast. And I really compliment both the writer and the artist. And obviously the Russos too. I can't leave them out since they conceptualized the story.
Right. No,
But the reason I pull it up with Andy Parks is I felt like, reading the old Green Arrow stuff that him and Phil Hester did, they've already had to do this before. Like he already had to do this as an inker with Kevin Smith writing, who's not an experienced comic book writer either, coming from the same background as the Russos, right? As a movie director and actor. So that obviously Kevin Smith is a lifelong comic book fan and a different, very different than comparing him to the Russos, right?
Well, I mean, there's something that can be said about being a lifelong comic book fan and then sitting down to try to write your first, like you can learn how to screenplay and then you can learn how to write comic books, but they're very different. They're similar. They use a lot of the same type of, I want to say, what goes into it structurally and everything obviously is the same, but formatting and everything else is very different. And then when you're writing for a film, it's really easy to write action sequences that flow and follow because the camera will be following that. But when you're writing an action sequence for a comic book graphic novel, you have to really think about how can and will the artist be able to do this and do it in a way that's possible, because you can have a really great action sequence, but if the artist isn't, it's just, outside of reality for them to draw something like that, because it's just too much to fit in a panel or a page sequentially to make it work. Or if it's going to cover, if you have a page count of like, we'll just say 250 pages and your really amazing action sequence is going to cost you 30 pages, is there a benefit to it? And that's where, having somebody that's skilled in that, like Andy Parks, to be able to really tighten down action sequences to make the most, I want to say, budget those uses of space and uses of action into those panels and maximize that type of storytelling, along with amazing dialogue and the amount of narrative that was dropped in. But it's definitely one of those things that, yes, you can be like Kevin Smith or the Russos and be a fan of comics and then be able to create great screenplays. But sometimes it's definitely makes a lot more sense to have somebody that has the ability to do that kind of comic book writing.
I personally am super anxious to ask Andy Parks himself just that question. What was it like? And Phil Hester, because what was it like working with Kevin Smith? Andy Parks, what was it like working with the Russos? How were you able to guide them? How did you use your experience as an artist and a writer to guide them in the right direction to make such a phenomenal book like Ciudad? And I may just get the opportunity to ask them both those questions at Ocon Expo.
Oh, yeah?
In Omaha, Nebraska /
Council Bluffs, Iowa.
Council Bluffs, Iowa. Which are right by each other, apparently. And this is my knowledge of American geography, where I asked Greg last week. You didn't tell me we were going to Iowa.
It's just like the best part about covering this book and talking about Ocon Expo is it's just like the story Ciudad. A bridge connects both cities, and the only way to get from one to the other is to cross a bridge. But we have to do it in such a way. It is
and if I do my job, this podcast will be in the listeners' grubby hands on July 12th.
All right. That's just in time.
Is 1 week approximately before we show up in Council Bluffs, Iowa / Omaha, Nebraska for Ocon Expo.
Amazing.
And you can ask us about our feelings about it. But if you show up, why ask us? Just go to Andy Parks himself and ask him.
Yeah, there you go.
And I'm super excited to be there with Phil Hester and Andy Parks. It's going to be awesome.
It is going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's funny when I actually look at the website and come to the realization that there's going to be these amazing creators there that I never get to see because they're in the Midwest. And I actually get to go ask them questions, and probably to the point where I bug them and they tell me to go away and banish me back to my table. But we will be there.
It's true. They might.
They might. It depends on their mood. Sometimes I have creators like, no, actually, stay here and keep talking. I don't care about the line. Sometimes I have creators that are like, Dan.
We've talked for 30 minutes. Give another person a chance. 30 minutes? It only seems like 10. Actually, it's been 2 hours.
But what I have learned, and I don't know if this is still true, I've learned that Andy Parks enjoys booze. It says Andy is fond of vintage fedoras, golf, and bourbon, also rum and vodka.
Oh, okay. Is this on his
It's in his bio
in
this book.
All right.
So perhaps, if we were being kind, we would bring Mr. Hester and Mr. Parks a fine bottle of bourbon that we could hand off to them, and then maybe they would enjoy that.
Are you trying to bribe them just like in Ciudad?
I think so. I do think based off the storytelling here, this is clearly how I get my way.
Okay, I see. So
if I showed up at the table with a bottle of bourbon, perhaps he would happily sign my copy of Ciudad and also sign my Green Arrow comic.
You might have to do it in a party bag because I think it might be frowned upon at the show.
Are you sure?
I don't know.
Well, what you're saying is we would have to smuggle in.
Oh, Dan.
See, we're going to have to smuggle it in and then get it to Mr. Parks.
I see. This is a very, he's been thinking about this for a while, folks.
Well, probably like we think of exquisite fine bourbon that we'd be smuggling in. It'll probably just end up with little bottles of Fireball from the corner store.
That is not. I think that's an insult to the man.
Well, since the little bottles of Fireball aren't even actual whiskey,
it's a wine.
Yeah, then that probably would be an insult. But yeah, we're going to be at Ocon Expo on the 21st, 22nd, 23rd of July, which is in just a couple weeks.
Yeah,
coming up faster than I thought it was.
It is coming up quick. I got to pack.
Yeah, you've got to pack, and I've got to
pack.
I don't know, pack, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the one that really has to pack. I don't need to bring very much.
It's true. I gotta.
But you have to pack up like stuff. Books and things. So
books and things. I
just have to put some stickers in a box and bring you a hat, which I probably should do before we leave.
Yeah. If I get it before we go on the plane, then I'll be fine.
I'm wearing my hat right now.
Well, aren't you lucky?
I decided I should start wearing the hat that advertises the podcast in public because, that seems smart.
Yeah. And then people were like, oh, hey, what's that? And you're like, oh, it's like my podcast.
Well, come by and see us. We'll give you a sticker. Yeah. You can meet Greg.
And you can meet Dan.
You can meet Greg and Michael Tanner, the co-authors of Junior Braves of the Apocalypse.
Oh, yeah, that thing.
You can meet Brett Waddell, who draws everything. He'll be selling prints and doing art stuff, and then you should probably Starlight. Seriously, if you want something awesome looking, go get a commission from Brett.
Yeah.
He does digital, he also does watercolor, and he can do line art too. I mean, he can do anything. I don't want to say it, but I think his art style is beautiful, and
it is.
I wish I could do that stuff, but it's Brett and he's magical. So come say hi, check out Brett's table as well. And obviously Phil Hester and Andy Parks, go check them out. And there's lots of other guests there. So come ask Morgan Fairchild why she was so mean to everybody on Falcon Crest. I almost said Knots Landing.
Same time slot, wrong show. No, I'm just joking. I don't think it's the same time slot.
I think it might have been the same time slot, actually. But
different channel.
Yeah. Anyway, so we'll be there. Come hang out with us. And of course, as always, listen to the show. Tell people about it. If you like us bantering about comics,
share it.
Listen, share, tell people. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. The Insta.
Yeah.
No, the Insta.
The Insta?
Come on.
Okay, the Insta.
I'm cool. It's the Insta, right?
He's cool, kids. It's not cheaty at all.
No, I'm so cool that I'm the opposite of cool.
Hello, fellow young people. We're on the Insta.
Hello, young friends.
Follow us.
You can follow us on the Facebook.
Funny Book 4 and 6.
And it's pretty neato. Well, I guess we need to go because I need to go edit a last podcast and get it up by tomorrow and stuff. And you need to go do and store things, which and store things means the Retro Emporium on Meeker in Washington.
That's right.
Check it out if you want to relive your childhood. On that note, do you have any last things to plug?
No, I have nothing else that I can talk about. So nothing else to plug at the moment. I mean, yeah, I think we covered it all.
Get a copy of Junior Braves of the Apocalypse. If you can, or the game, and bring it by. And Mike and Greg will be happy to sign it for you and even personalize it.
I guess Starlight. If you come to the show,
a copy of that with you too.
Yeah, well,
get it signed by Brett and Greg.
Yeah, if you have it, come get it signed by us. If you don't have it, you can come pick up a copy from us.
I may bring one and get it signed by Brett and Greg.
Oh boy,
because I don't have one signed. I mean, Greg, I love you, and I probably can get your signature most days, but I don't get to hang out with Brett all the time. So
yeah, so I mean, get it signed.
Why maybe not? I will.
You should.
Okay, maybe I will.
Do it.
Fine. Well, I guess we're done then.
All right, we're done.
We're done.
Hit that button, Dan.
We're done.
Hit the
button.
We're done.
Why?